Welcome, everyone. My name is Charles Thompson. Happy to have you here this evening. Our goal today is to educate you on the benefits of solar without you having to worry about the pressure of having someone come into your home and do sales tactics or any of that. And what we hope is that by the end of this webinar, one of two things will happen. You will be able to determine solar is or isn't right for you. If it is, then what we'll do is we'll give you a link to complete the qualification information so we can set up for a no-cost evaluation of that proposal for your home. I'd like to focus a little bit on what the typical myths are regarding solar today. Oftentimes, homeowners feel that solar is too expensive, and really up until the last few years, it was. There are three things that have happened to make solar more economical. Number one, yes, the prices on solar have reduced in the past decade by about 80%. That's good news. But now they've leveled out, and even if they were to drop significantly more, which we don't anticipate, that big reduction has already been taken. So that's why it's now, number one, reason it's more affordable. Number two is that most of the utility companies now, the monopolized utility grids, are cooperating with what's called net metering. And I'll return to that in just a few minutes. And then the third is that financing has become readily available and low interest rates to make it more economical. Most people wouldn't buy a home unless financing was available. Most people wouldn't buy a new car, unless financing was available. And it's pretty much the same thing for solar. Now that financing is available, you're actually able to exchange one of the bills that you have that's considered a liability, that's your electric bill, with another bill or a payment for a loan that will be an asset on your home, that will appreciate the value of your home, that every time that you make a payment on that loan, you have less obligation and you have a return on that investment. So it's a very different conversation just in the last few years. Oftentimes, people in the Midwest are concerned that they don't have enough access to sun. Here in Texas, there's not an issue with that. We have sun 300 days a year. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at your home. We're going to look at the longitude, latitude, the weather data for multiple decades. And when the system is built, it's going to be built specifically to your specifications. And we'll talk more about that during the presentation. Another myth is that technology is moving fast, and why not wait until something better is around? Well, solar's been out now for 65 years, and only in the last 5 years has it become economically viable for a typical homeowner, which means even if a new technology were to emerge today, it will be decades before that technology is cost-effective enough for a typical homeowner to be able to convert to that technology. So why wait for what we don't know is going to happen? Why not take advantage of what has already been proven and can make tremendous economical sense? Some of our customers often wonder, well, should I lease? Should I own? What's the best way for me to go? And the best way to find out is to actually evaluate your situation. We can facilitate any of the financing solutions that are best for you. Not what's best for us, but what's best for you. Oftentimes people say, well, I'm going to be moving in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I'm going to show you at the closing of the slides some of the very, very relevant and important data that's actually a good thing, not a bad thing. We'll come back to that. And then lastly, I don't know who to trust. Our goal is for you to be able to develop that trust in us. There's no hard selling. There's no tactics that are going. We focus on education. And if you choose to go solar, we hope you'll do that with us. If you choose to wait, we hope that when you make the decision to go solar, that you'll come back and talk with us. That being said, our main source of energy today comes from dirty energy. And that's not a preach. That's just the way it is. There's nearly 8,000 operational power plants in the US, and it's dirty energy. There's simply a better way. And the better way is by capturing the energy from the sun, where we convert the photons, the UV rays of the sun, into usable energy. If you capture that into the solar panels, it converts it into DC, which then we use an inverter that converts it into what we use in the home, which is AC. Very simple. When the energy is converted, it powers your home first. And typically during the day, you're producing more energy than you're using. So that excess energy is actually sent out onto the grid. I mentioned net metering earlier. I'm going to come back to that. That's the important part of the economic way of making solar more affordable today. If you look at a solar panel, and we happen to use black on black, very attractive, high wattage, high efficiency panels, the most important part, the magic happens here in the crystalline cells. You put a bunch of cells together, that forms a panel, and that panel is actually surrounded by the encapsulants and backsheets and tempered glass to protect the panel, to protect the elements, that is, from the elements. So protect those crystalline cells from any of the elements, whether that be humidity, heat, lightning, you name it, hail. We, as a company, have had thousands of customers that have gone solar and have yet to replace one panel because of that. We've had to remove panels to have the roof repaired from hail damage, those types of things. But I personally have yet to have any replaced. And even if they were, the beauty of solar is it is covered by your insurance company. It's listed on your policy. And typically, there's no change or cost structure for that. And if it's an act of God, such as that, then it's covered through that. The one thing that I have found with many companies today is they're actually giving incentives now, small discounts, because it's actually protecting your roof. It's laying another effective barrier to the damages that occur and actually protects the roof from the UV rays as well as all the other elements. When you look at the system, what we're going to do is we're going to design what's called a solar array. And that array is going to be designed to replace as much, or hopefully all, of the energy that you're currently renting from the monopolized utility with energy that you can own. This is the system in its entirety. There are no moving parts, so you don't have to have concerns about maintenance or any of those types of things. You have your panels, you have the inverter that I referred to, the wiring, the racking, where we now have very attractive racking that pretty much lays your system down on top of your roof where it's very clean and pristine, as opposed to back in the older days, they were really bright blue panels with white lines. They stood up about a foot off the top of the roof. So it's become much more appealing in terms of the aesthetics of these systems. We have the inverter connected to the grid, and we'll come back to that in the form of net metering. Our systems come with a 25-year manufacturer warranty for production and for wear and tear. And we provide a decade-long warranty, so you have no concerns about anything happening with your roof. One of the benefits of participating in solar this year is this is the last year for the 30% federal tax credit that you may be eligible for, assuming you have taxable income. So there's really a sense of urgency here to get the systems installed by the end of the year, and we're beginning to see a very significant surge of volume of people recognizing that. So it's best to get yourself in the queue and get these systems installed before the big rush comes at the latter part of the year. A lot of things have changed. There are 28 states, or excuse me, 28 cities that require solar when the home is newly constructed or renovated. And most recently, the entire state of California approved and mandated that solar be installed on any new construction and renovation starting January 1st, 2020, which coincides, by the way, with the elimination of the 30% tax credit. So if you think about that, more and more states are doing the same. 21 states currently have this in consideration for legislation. So the best thing to do is take advantage of whatever incentive you can do before the incentive is the law. Oftentimes like to compare solar to gasoline, and that may not make a lot of sense until you think about this. We all pretty much know what we pay for a gallon of gas, and oftentimes we may shop a little bit or drive to a mile or so away to get a better cost on gas or a different station, etc. So what if you think back maybe 15, 20 years ago when gas was less than $1 a gallon. Knowing what you know now, if you were given a card that allowed you to lock in that price for your gas for the next 20 years and potentially for the rest of your life, knowing what you know now, is that something that would have made sense? Would you have done that? Well, that's really what solar does for you today. It allows you to lock in the price of your energy for the rest of your life. You don't have to worry about the rise in costs that happen, that typically more than 4% per year. We're seeing here in Texas, we're seeing people's rates go up 15 to 20% over a period of 12 months. And that's going to continue as more and more people go solar. Then the utilities are going to have to reach back into the homeowners who don't and raise their costs. So the best thing to do is lock that in. Take control of that electric bill so you never have to worry about that. A lot of people don't have any idea what they're paying for a kilowatt hour of energy. They just know that they have to pay it. And when you pay that, what's the return on your investment? There is no other than your lights turning on. So our goal is to help educate you and help you lock in those prices. And the beauty of solar is whatever loan, or if you pay cash, once that's paid off, you pay nothing for the energy produced by those panels ever again. And just think, if somebody knocked on your door from the electric company and said, "Mrs. Smith, I'm here to help lock in your rates for the rest of your life. It will cost you nothing out of pocket. All you have to do is sign here. We're going to put a power plant on your roof at no cost to you." Would you do that? Well, they're not going to do that, but we are. So that's why we're here today. What we want to be able to do is help you understand how you are paying and how to determine what your kilowatt hour rate is. Oftentimes, it's not very clear. You see a lot of hidden fees or miscellaneous fees, and you think that, well, I'm not actually paying for a kilowatt hour at that rate. But really, the way you do that is you determine how many kilowatt hours you've used, what your total bill is, inclusive of all those fees, and you divide that, because that is what you're paying. You're paying for the entire amount, inclusive of all the fees, and that's what determines your kilowatt hour rate. So take a look at your bill, and that's one of the things that we'll need from you if you want to take a look at getting a proposal, because what we need to see is how much energy you're actually using during a period of time and how much you're paying, so we can show you two things. Here's the system that we're going to design, and here's the economic return on that investment. Very, very simple. I mentioned net metering, and net metering is really important to the benefits of solar, and virtually all of the major electric companies now are cooperating. And the reason is there's mandates out there that require them to produce renewable energy. And why not use your roof rather than having to invest into that infrastructure? So they cooperate. And why is because power is only generated during daylight hours, and that's when your demand is typically lower. Most of your power is needed at night. I'm going to show you a graph in a moment what it typically looks like. That's when there's no sun that's out. So the solar system is actually connected to the grid. That's your backup form of power. And the grid acts like a giant battery, for a lack of better words. And the grid receives the excess energy your system will produce during the daylight hours. And then you're going to pull from the grid during the nighttime when there's no sun. And basically they credit you for the electricity you put on. And then they deduct those credits at night when you draw them. And then if there's a difference, they'll bill you for that at the end of each month. Some utility companies have monthly true-ups and some have annual true-ups. We'll talk about that when we see your specific utility and bill. This is a little bit of a visual of that. So here's the typical consumption pattern during the day of a home. And what you'll see is this portion, the blue, is what you're still renting from the utility grid. This portion, the orange, is what you are using, but what you're also producing from your solar panels. And this energy here is the excess energy. Some people wonder what happens to that. Well, basically through net metering, it reallocates that energy so that you actually get credit for everything that you put onto the grid on a one-to-one, retail-to-retail basis. That's the beauty and one of the magics of how solar has become very economically viable. Generally, solar requires a 200 amp electric panel. There are cases where we can make it work without, but if we need to upgrade your electric system, this is the time to do it when we facilitate solar, and we can pack it in and finance that for you for very, very little money. So when we go to the next phase of evaluating your home, we're going to look for 3 pictures. We're going to look for a picture stepping back, looking at your panel about 4 or 5 feet from back. One of the sticker, so we can see what the bus bar rating and any of the other wiring schematics that we need to look at. And then the last one, and very important one, is the size of the main breaker. You'll see here there's a main breaker. Just zoom in on that and shoot us a picture of the main breaker as well. There are other criteria besides the panel. Cost of energy, we'll evaluate that with you. Your credit, if you determine you want us to facilitate low interest financing, then credit is going to be something we'll look at. Generally, we're looking for a 650 Empirica score, credit score, or higher. And we can actually do a really easy soft check. It doesn't affect your credit score. We can evaluate whether this is going to work for you simply by taking most of the public information we have and using 3 criteria. We look at your monthly mortgage payment. We look at how much your household income is for the significant partners within that home. And lastly, we look at the last 4, not your entire social, just the last 4. So we do a soft check, doesn't affect your credit score, and it gives us a range of where you fit. Sometimes as a backup, we need the date of birth to match up with that, but those are things we can take up when we get on the call with you. We're also going to look at your roof and your shading. What we're looking for on the roof is, where is it facing? Ideally, we're going to get most of our production from the south-facing part of your roof. East and west are second. Generally, north is not viable. It doesn't produce enough energy, so we don't place panels on the north side. We also need to see if there's enough space. Some homes here in Texas have very complicated angles, and we have to look at that and see if it's viable. We also want to look at the quality, whether the roof needs to be replaced before going solar, or if it's going to need to be replaced in the next 5 years, you should probably do it now, because you can take advantage of that 30% federal income tax credit. And that's a real benefit. It's 30% off the cost of the roof. So we'll evaluate that with you, as well as to see if there's any obstructions, any trees that might prevent the UV rays from getting to the sun. So if you have excessive shading, we'll either need to remove or trim back those trees to make this produce the amount of energy that we need. As we come to the last part of this section here, a lot of people want to know what happens if I sell my home. And rather than us or me providing you with our opinion, we actually like to cite some very, very important, relevant third parties, starting with Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac, who finances a bunch of loans, as you very well know. I'm sure you've heard of them. They actually have determined that they've rewritten the lending law so that they can facilitate and require the appraisal of solar. And the base rate that we're finding to be consistent is at $4 per watt. And we'll make that make sense when we design the system and know exactly what size system that you're going to have. And I'll circle back to that. In addition, the Berkeley Lab study, you can find these independent of what I'm referring to here today. That's a .gov study. And they found that the value of a solar system on a new home, of course, is less than an existing home, but this is how most people go on solar today. And they determined the value at $4.51 a watt. Whereas the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, a very useful study that was done, and these were done on thousands of homes. So this isn't just one market. This isn't just a handful of homes. It's done on thousands and thousands of homes so that they can determine the value. And they say it's $5.91 a watt. Now there's some disparity there, obviously. So we try to stay conservative. We work with the Fannie Mac numbers of $4 per watt. So how's that determined? If you look at your home today, and you continue to invest into the utility company, which is your liability. By the way, what's your return on your electric payment that you're making every month? What's your return on that investment? Obviously, your lights turn on, but there's no return on that investment. Whereas with solar, the value typically is about $25,000 added value to the home. And then whatever the energy savings is, that's an asset to you because you're no longer investing that into someone else's electrical grid, you're putting it on your power plant on your roof. So if you look at how that's determined, it's determined by the savings. So today, your electric bill, and we're just going to use a rate of 4% increase, just to be conservative. And again, here in the Dallas market, for example, we're seeing rates increase double digits because of the changes that are happening in the industry. But let's keep it 4%. It's going to grow, and it will double about every 12 to 14 years, depending upon what that actual increase is. So if you're paying $200 a month now, likely in 20 years, you're going to be paying somewhere in the range of $550 to $600. And this is all data that can be backed up. Whereas when you convert to solar, if you look at that bill, it's going to stay flat for the entire time. If you paid cash, then there's no payment. If we facilitated a loan, then that payment will stop at 10, 12, or 20 years. I typically recommend a 20-year loan because it makes that payment lower, and there's no prepayment penalty. You can pay it off anytime. You can pay it if you sell your home, etc. And whatever bill remains, sometimes there's none, sometimes there's a connection charge, sometimes we can't produce 100% of your energy. And look, if we can produce 60% of your energy, take advantage of that and lock it in, because that 60% you never have to worry about negotiating what that is, and you're investing into your home instead of into the monopolized utility grid. That's a really simple way to look at the benefits of solar. And if you pay cash, this is data that is really important. It's the best return on investment of anything out there. CD, bonds, S&P 500. So we can, of course, take a cash deal. And there's an incentive. If you go cash, it's about 5% less if you go cash, because financing does cost money and it requires work to get it done. But either way, it's still an asset versus a liability. If you're swapping one bill that you're currently paying the electric company for renting their energy with no return on investment with another bill, even if it's a little bit higher in the initial year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're having an asset on your home. You can see the data that we've just shown you, that asset grows in value and decreases your liabilities. Last section here is the National Renewable Energy Lab study. You can Google these terms. They find solar homes sold 20% faster and for 17% more, part of their thousands of homes study. The U.S. Department of Energy, according to them, they say homes sell twice as fast as homes without solar panels. Last one here is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Say that it makes your house more affordable to more people, because now if you sell it with solar on top, they don't have to pay for that power anymore. It attracts attention in a competitive market, and it's a home improvement what actually saves money. Whereas a pool or a new kitchen or any of those, they're improvements. They're lovely, but they're not saving you money. They're costing you money. So those are some independent sources that I hope shows you that it's not our opinion. There's a lot of data that backs up the benefits of solar. So as I conclude here are your options. You can stick with what you're doing. If that's working for you, not having any control over your rates, and having to renegotiate them year to year, every 3 years, adding no value to your home, investing into someone else's infrastructure, that works, by all means. Or you can go solar. You have the option of going solar with a zero out of pocket. You have long-term savings. You take control of that electric bill, and you can predict that payment for the rest of your life. And it also adds value to your home. That is the conclusion of this educational event. We hope that you found this informative, and we hope that we can facilitate a proposal for you to be able to conclude and save you money, predict your rates. We appreciate your participation. Follow the link below and submit the bill, and we'll go ahead and take care of that for you. Thanks for listening, and have a wonderful day.